The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Monday in a Riv, and off we go with the stats.
Okay. Our COVID stats for yesterday, as of yesterday. Total number of cases in Massachusetts is 77,793. Total deaths is 4,979. Total number of new deaths for yesterday was 139. Total new cases is 1,050. Bristol County cases is 4,931. Fall River cases, there's 22 new positive cases, bringing the total up to 759 COVID confirmed. So it's going to be interesting to see. The mayor says it seems that we've been going up around 30 cases every day. So it's been up and down. I mean, I wouldn't say that's the average, but it's very interesting to see, and there's no new deaths. So,
well, that's a good thing, obviously. But I heard something on this morning's news, the local news I was watching, and they did say, and we haven't had time to check this, but they said New Bedford has the highest number of cases in Bristol County. They have like over 1,100. So Fall River's doing actually, in comparison to New Bedford, Fall River's not doing that badly.
Right, but there's also a difference in the communities. One of the differences is there's a higher population of Hispanics and other immigrant populations where they live in tight quarters. You know, a good chunk of them live in tight quarters. Another thing is where they work, because some of those people are still working. And there's been questions about working in the fishing industry and the fish houses and all of that. So, you know, you have to look at that. Also, that is a high transient population. So those are definitely things that they're going to have to look at. But again, we're doing better than they are.
Yeah, no, you're right. And obviously, too, there's also another aspect that's why some of these figures are, you know, like I said, the more data you get in, but you can get finite later. But there's also cultural differences. Hispanic and Latinos have a tendency to, you know, that's part of their culture, like machismo is. Also, they have la familia, so the families, and they tend to congregate together more. Even in situations like this, they have larger families, larger nuclear families even. So those are factors that I think that, you know, ultimately they will be, somebody may look at them, some sociologist or social anthropologist, because there are inherent differences in various cultures too. So I think culturally they're more prone to, I think you said that you had a gathering in your area of some people, and they tend to their family unit is much tighter. Some people, you know, you talk to some of your family maybe once a week or maybe once a month, or you know, in situations like this you commute, but they are extremely family oriented, and they really have a lot of contact with their family. So,
agreed. And the other thing is how much testing is being done in New Bedford. You know, we don't know exactly how much testing they're doing in New Bedford at this time. It could be more than what's happening here in Fall River. So remember, the number of tests that are done are also going to change the number of positives you have. And I expect that the higher number of testing you do, the more positives you're going to have. And now that Fall River has just added on another testing location, that being Rite Aid on Stafford Road, I think that you're going to see some more positives coming in each week or each day. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. It's going to be very interesting to see. But Rhode Island has opened up their gates. And so the clock has started. There's 14 days. We're going to be looking at the number of increases over the next 14 days, and if they have increases. Because I know a lot of people yesterday, being Mother's Day, went to Rhode Island just to get out of Massachusetts. So they had something to do because some of the state parks were open in Rhode Island. Even if they could only walk around or ride a bike, they were open. So they went and they did something. And I'm wondering what that's going to do. Plus, remember, they also had some minor restaurant openings where they could have meals on the sidewalk. So how many people went out and had a meal on a sidewalk? I don't know. But with all of that happening, non-essential businesses are starting to open. So we're going to see more and more people out because she has lifted the stay-at-home order. We are still in Massachusetts under a stay-at-home order, but Rhode Island is no longer. As a matter of fact, my friend Mark, Mark's a great guy. He called me. He said, "Oh, I can come out to Massachusetts and see you now." I said, "Yeah, but we're still in a stay-at-home order." Mark wants to see the dog. Yeah, Mark wants to see the dog. So,
and then we have the situation when we look at these other states, southern states, South Carolina and Georgia. I was watching some reports on those this morning, and they're saying that they've actually, even though they opened a lot of places, that they're actually seeing, less ventilator use, less. But they've done a lot of testing down there, and
right.
Here we go. I think we're being over-dated. That's the problem, because, as you said, CJ, we're getting a lot of this data. They say, "Oh, if you open up the stores, you got a spike." That spike isn't from as you and I were discussing before we went on the air. You got a 14-day incubation period with this thing. So because you open up stores today, if 3 days later you get a massive spike, it's not something you contracted 3 days ago. These are, we're picking up a lot of these cases, which skew the numbers and make them really, unfortunately, they're not really a good baseline because of the lack of testing, and everybody's not tested, much lower percentage. So, now that we're creating more and more test facilities, we're finding more and more people with the disease, but that disease they've already had, through its incubation period, which doesn't coincide with the opening of the restaurants.
Correct.
As well as I do, if they open up something in Massachusetts and then we have a spike 3 days later, they're going to attribute it to the opening. Some people are, when in fact probably isn't. Right.
And that's what happened, I think, with Georgia. They claimed that there was a $2,500 spike to $2,500. Yeah, right. I wish it was $2,500. A $2,500 spike in COVID positive tests, and you can't have that one day after you open because that goes back. And you and I talked about this earlier, that it's probably from testing that just hadn't been reported yet, or increased testing. Now, when we start looking at numbers that are going up, we can say it's possible that it was the opening of the stores and the beaches. But again, we don't know. And that one makes an issue. But 2 days after, it wouldn't be, those increases wouldn't be attributed to that. But you get into a week after, you might want to start attributing it to the opening of the stores and the beaches.
Yeah. And, it's hard. And, we've got this mass hysteria with this stuff for some people, and other people are just totally oblivious. They don't care. There are still some people that are contending this is a hoax.
Right.
I don't know, but they are. And I saw another interesting thing this morning. They were talking about 60% of the children are having psychological issues now, and they're all stressed out, which is really ironic because earlier in this morning, I saw something about they were discussing the Great Depression, which lasted actually over a decade. They said it's a decade, but it lasted over a decade. The Depression ended at the beginning of the First World War. They said 10 years. The crash was in 29. they said, the Great Depression lasted 10 years. The only reason was in 1939, that's when World War II began. We didn't enter it at that time. But then economies, they began to have some movement in the economy. And then, of course, Second World War and its wage and price controls really put everybody to work in the war industries. So the Depression was gone. But remember, you see that movie Cinderella Man with the guy that became that Jimmy Braddock guy that began boxing. They shut off his heat. They shut off his electricity. They didn't care if his kids died of pneumonia. Those kids had no electricity, no heat, no nothing. And that generation grew up a lot. They didn't wrap them in cotton. They had to realize, how difficult it was. And so life is like a grindstone. And if you can allow it to grind you down or polish you up. So it's amazing how we didn't have, imagine if that kind of depression, because they're talking about, I guess they had a pity party on a lot of these networks on Sunday, talking about how this may rival the Great Depression. And it's not going to, this isn't going to last 10 years. It may last a while. It's not going to be a V, it's going to be a U. But the reality is everybody, like I said, everybody's having a nervous breakdown when years ago, people who lived through the Depression not only lived through the Depression with nothing, virtually nothing. They shut, there were no prohibitions by the federal government that they couldn't shut your gas off, or they couldn't shut your electricity off, because they did.
Oh yeah.
And people had no heat, no electricity, nothing. And that generation then picked up a rifle, and many of them fought in World War II, because if they were born in, went through the Depression. My father had to come. My father's family moved down here from Maine in 1929 because of the Depression. They all lost their jobs in Maine, so they had to come down to Fall River. That's the reason that my family moved here from Maine on my father's side. But they were a much hardier breed. I mean, I don't know how children who still have electricity and stuff, what did they didn't get their Cocoa Puffs today or something. And now they need a psychiatrist. And I tell you, it doesn't bode well for this country's ability to snap back quickly, because
no, it doesn't.
When everybody's such a delicate snowflake, it makes it hard, because they're going to be curled up in a fetal position in the corner by the time this is all over. And that's a sad commentary on our ability, and that kind of flies in the face of American tradition, which this country's always been pretty resilient.
Yeah, I agree. And the biggest problem that we're seeing and we're having is the fact that nobody is saying why these children are having such psychological issues. There's not a specific reason. They're not saying, oh, because of isolation, or which we know what it is. I mean, it is from some social isolation. But these kids, anyways, before we went into quarantine, were not out. They weren't out playing with friends. They were sitting at home on their phones, on their computers, on their game systems. So there's no difference right now for them on whether or not they can be socializing with their friends or not, because they socialize with their friends on the computer, on their phones, on their game systems. So where is this psychological issue coming from? Is it because they're stuck with their parents and they don't want to be with their parents 24 hours a day? They can't be with their friends, but they got to be with their family. Is that a problem? Maybe. I don't know. It makes for an interesting time, that's for sure.
Well, I've got a theory, and my theory is far too many psychiatrists and psychologists, because it seems to me that years ago, children were still children. It was different. Today, my generation, your generation, would have went nuts if we were confined to the home, because when we grew up, we played outside.
Right.
You didn't play around the house. You had none of these games. You had to go outside and occupy your mind and learn how to play. We shot marbles. We played Vikings with homemade shields and sticks and swords, which now would be considered, they wouldn't let you do it because they consider it's way too violent. But We had to play outside. The biggest punishment we ever had when we grew up was getting a house. The worst punishment today's children can do is get out of the house, put your phones and your iPads down, and get out. And now we have a name for everything. Psychologists and psychiatrists make everything a disease, a psychological issue.
Right.
You know, if you're just, you know, if you're just a pain in the butt, now you got attention deficit disorder, and we got this disorder, and everything's a disorder. It's amazing. How do we manage to colonize this country? How do we manage to settle the United States when these people got on the Conestoga wagons and went across the United, left the East Coast to go out to West, you know, and they fought off Indians, and these kids that were growing up was stuck on a little tiny wagon for months.
Months, exactly.
And nobody had attention deficit disorder.
I know.
You know, and then when you got your little house on a prairie, you couldn't get attention deficit disorder because when you got up, you had to go work on a farm until night, and then you ate and you maybe read a book, and then you passed out because you're exhausted from working all day. And that's the problem. You know, there are too many psychiatrists. Every single thing in a society, if somebody has any behavior that goes outside the sociological norm, they're trying to find a reason for it. And that the last reason they look at is maybe the kid is being a kid.
That's it. That's it. You know, and that's a big issue. So, well, I want to get on to some issues that are coming up here in the city. Tomorrow, there is a committee on ordinance meeting that's happening. And guess what they're going to discuss tomorrow? Water rates, sewer rates. And I want people to remember, I want to bring you back to Mary Sahadi's comments when they talked about bringing up the sewer rates. And I lost my co-host there for a second. And they brought up Mary Sahadi's comments where she said the reason why we need to increase the rates is to have more money to put into the free cash. Oh, that's what you were getting. More money to put into the free cash. And let me tell you something. That's not a reason to raise rates. That's not a reason to raise taxes. And that's what's happening. So I would suggest that anyone who's watching that wants to oppose these water and sewer rate increases, because again, they've misrepresented how much they're going to go up. I would suggest that you send an email or a letter to city_clerks, CLERKS, at fallriverma.org and have it read at the Committee on Ordinance meeting so they know. Now, I have spoken to some city councilors who serve on the committee, who do not serve on the committee, and they say that while they're against, and I love it. Here we go again with the wishy-washy politics.
I'm against it, but I'm voting for it.
You know, while I understand the premise of there needs to create more money for the free cash in case there's an emergency, you know, I may have to vote for it. And you know what? That's bull. That's absolute bull. Because you know what?
You don't think it's an emergency now?
Exactly.
It's absolute BS. Absolute BS. Listen, the only thing Mary Sahadi has ever known how to do in her almost 3 decades being involved with this city is spend money. And the only way she knows how to get the money that she spends is raising fees and taxes, because that's always her solution, is to raise taxes and raise fees and cut things that we need, essentials. Has the city council ever asked her how we managed to get into $8 million debt under Flanagan and $4.7 million gap deficit, whatever you want to call it now? No. They're going to go to that audits meeting. They're going to listen to her bullshit about how we need to put more money in a fund that we never use. Because all we ever do is put money in that fund to save up for a rainy day. I hate to tell you this, but it's a monsoon right now.
Exactly.
Right? We got a monsoon here. And the thing is that you don't your fiscal imprudence. I want to know where we overspent. When we looked at last year's budget, they said we were financially solid. We had all kinds of money. There was an election coming, and we were great. We were in great shape. What happened? Has anybody? No investigation on the 22 windows. No investigation on this gap. Nobody ever asked how the hell we got here. And remember, if you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it.
And that's what we're doing.
Mary Hattie is involved with the finances of the city of Fall River. The only thing they know how to do is spend. Nobody ever looks at how we look at the boat. We already forgot the boat.
I didn't forget about the boat. Believe me, I haven't forgotten about it.
$100,000 boat we bought. Nobody knew about it. Oh yeah, I got some paperwork on it. Well, it took you 3 years to get in front of the city council. Is the city council outraged? No. Oh yeah, they probably should have brought it. Probably bull. You're the legislative body. You think somebody'd be pissed? No. Well, we got to buy it now because they already said we're going to buy it. No, you don't have to buy it, as you said, and you flush in on the air. They don't give you the money, the purchase doesn't go through.
That's right.
You're there for council, and you may not be there after the next election.
Right, because it's getting ridiculous. And while we're speaking about this money to create free cash, Mary Sahadi has been using the free cash each year to build up our stabilization fund, or our whatever she wants to call it. And free cash just means you've been overtaxed. I brought this up in the weekend flush. And what the city does, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chip, but what the city does, this various departments, is even if a position is unfilled and they have no intentions of filling it, they budget that salary and benefits. And that's what creates extra cash at the end of the year, or creates their slush fund. Am I right?
Right. And in addition to that, they also do not fill positions, important positions. They were supposed to put firefighters on shortly. They're going to delay that.
Right.
And they've done that for years, and I used to complain about it all the time. They leave positions unfilled a lot longer than they should. They should be replacing public safety and necessary positions that provide services to the city. That's why we pay taxes as quickly as possible, but they don't, because at the end of the year, they realize it in free cash, just like with the healthcare. Literally tens of millions of dollars in healthcare they have gotten by cost shifting and by the fact that we run under budget. And and the employees have nearly $6 million extra in our fund in case we have a bad year. The city has virtually nothing because they divert it and spend it. As I said, you give them the Sahara Desert, Mary Sahadi will spend it. And then they'll go back and say, we're in trouble, and who again gets the hit? They come up to you and tell you how much we need it. Here it is. They wave this wonderful flower at you. We have to do this because we're going to do this. And then when you're not looking and the city council doesn't do their job, that flower slowly turns. And then you get smacked with another tax increase. That's what happens. That's the city's tax increase that they love to do and justify. And I'll tell you what, CAG is going to be looking for city council candidates in addition to trying to get rid of this CPA and the overtaxing. People are out of work. This city was poor to begin with, and now even a few people that had crappy jobs don't have crappy jobs.
Right.
All the dishwashers and all the people that work in restaurants are out of work. They're not making any tips. They're not making any money. And these clowns are not asking how we got here. When's somebody going to ask Mary Sahadi, why the hell wasn't the water department's budget on target? Why do we need an increase? And to tell me that you're going to overtax me so you can put in money in a savings account and say we were going to save it for a rainy day. Well, when the hell is it going to be raining harder than this? We got a school being built They want to implement the tax increases. They want to implement the override earlier. They want to increase everything, all the fees and taxes. And nobody on our city council is going to ask how the hell we got here. What did we do? Show me in a budget how we ended up almost $5 million in the hole. I got a theory, because I can't tell you definitively because she won't give me the numbers. I'm still waiting for the numbers after 2 meetings with the mayor and assurances that I get what I needed, and I did.
Well, that makes it look like the mayor wants to hide these numbers too, and that's not a good thing. But remember something, and Kathy Ann, Mary Sahadi said, I don't think Kathy Ann said, I don't believe she was there at the time, but Mary Sahadi said it very clearly that it is her intention and the city's intention to raise taxes every year by the maximum allowable amount, which is 2.5%. And that makes sure they get more money available for their free cash. And that's not a good thing, because remember, we're looking at free cash amounts that are, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time, sometimes even up in the $1 million section. So while we're discussing all this free cash, let's discuss this 2.5% raise each year. You're already predicting a 2.5% raise each year before you even know the budget for that year. So that tells me right then and there that you don't care what the budget is. You're going to raise the taxes. And you don't care what the people want or the people need. You're going to raise the taxes. So that's why I said in the flush, it's now time to start discussing and planning on getting a measure placed on the ballot to promote a Prop 2.5 underride. Let's take away some money. And we've had some discussions on this. And right now we're talking between $10 and $50 million out of the budget. If you take $50 million out of the budget, that's approximately 1/5 of the city budget. You take $50 million out of the tax assessment, that's approximately 1/5 of the city budget. You know the first words they're going to scream at $10 million, we're going to have to get rid of police and fire. People are already sick and tired of hearing that threat. It's not going to work. It's not going to work, especially when you look at the police, because guess what? If your house is broken into, they don't come to your house and look it over. They say, go online and file the report. If you get into a car accident, they say, file the report, unless somebody's injured.
Well, do you realize how absolutely obscene it is to her to say that what, yes, you said, that was an absolutely tremendous point you just made. And you didn't make it in print, so you did, Flush. You alluded to this numerous times, but now you've said it, and we're saying it on the air. Let's look at this. Let's evaluate what she said. You remember years ago, the only time we ever got a tax increase is when we were doing something new, like we were building another building. Oh, we got to increase a little bit because, and then if you raise the taxes, you got fired 2 years in a row.
Right.
And there had to be a justifiable reason to take money from the taxpayer. We have evolved to the Mary Sahadi method of we just keep taking your damn money whether we need it or not, and we're going to stick it in a bank. No, I want my money in my bank, not in your bank, because you've been misusing my money for years, giving people jobs, giving people look, the last 2 hires, Seacock and Barrington, not even in a state. Political hires in direct conflict with our charter. That piece of crap. Nobody gets hired. They hire whoever the hell they want because those are political positions. So, but the reality is, she got up there and said, as you said, we're just raising your taxes because we can.
That's right.
No person, any city councilor who allowed her to say that and will allow her to promote a budget and increase our taxes with no reason to do it. And if she cites the gap without demanding to know how we got that gap, when we constantly have had tax increases, they do not belong sitting in that chair.
I agree. Well, we're out of time, Chip. We're out of time, so I want to thank you all for watching. We never have enough time on this show. We really don't. Maybe we're gonna talk to them about raising us to an hour. Get that, so swipe and go, let it go, Chip. Okay, everyone. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. stay angry.